Welcome, everyone. I'm your host and the moderator today. I'm Mike Lasecki, and our topic is professional development and instructional resources for the future of work. Brought to you by CORD. CORD is a nonprofit organization that focuses on leading change in education. Joining me today is Anne-Claire Anderson, the principal investigator of our project, and Marilyn Barger, a special consultant to the project, and myself, of course. Let's look at the next slide, Anne-Claire.
Well, good afternoon. Good morning if you're way out in the time zone. I like how Mike says good day because that covers just about everybody. Our project, Preparing Technicians for the Future of Work, is an NSF Advanced Technological Education project. So I'm going to recap a little bit of what we talked about last month in our first webinar, and you can access that webinar online as well. Here are the goals for preparing technicians for the future of work. As you can surmise, if you look at goal 4, foster implementation of the cross-disciplinary STEM core to maximize impact on technician education. We're talking about that today, how we can do that, and that the project has some recommendations and some resources for making that happen. So to set the stage, we know, I know, all of us know that we are surrounded by technological advancement and disruption, and that our STEM technicians sit at the center of all that swirling around them. Lots of different organizations and associations have studied the issue, and the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, for example, shows how data analysis and all sorts of digital skills are taking on new importance, and entirely new job descriptions are in this report from the same type of report 2 years ago. So they need to be comfortable working with data and digital tools. In another report, Burning Glass, which does a lot of HR and hiring study, in their new foundational skills of the digital economy, notes that what we're going to be talking about is a hybridization of skills that come out of kind of disparate domains, and that demand our technicians and our technician education programs teach for breadth and flexibility of the workforce. Now, based on our project's exploration, here are the skill areas that will carry technicians into a secure future of work. And we call them broadly the cross-disciplinary STEM core. It consists of skill sets within 3 skill areas: data knowledge and analysis, advanced digital literacy, and business knowledge and processes. To provide some structure for thinking about that, and for particularly thinking about curriculum and instruction, the project has released a framework for the cross-disciplinary STEM core, and it has specific recommendations in it for steps that faculty and instructional leaders, employers, and community college presidents even can take toward supporting the introduction of new technical skills, regardless of discipline or sector. This is where you can find the framework on our website. It's all under preparingtechnicians.org. So we know that technicians will need these skill sets. How do we fit them into our programs that already are pretty full and pretty specialized? That's the question we're going to talk about today. One of the things the project is doing is creating instructional cards that look at these skill areas and help instructors who may not be in that field, and also students who may be in a different STEM field, envision how those skill areas apply to them and to their work in the future. So these cards, there's student content and there's also instructor content. These are designed just to give students a taste of the topic. It's at a pretty introductory level. We're not trying to, teach them everything they need to know about cybersecurity, but they need to be conversant in the topic. so that when it comes to the floor where they're working or the lab, they understand its significance. Each card contains definitions, the basic vocabulary, an example of a technician using that skill area in a field, broad descriptions of the skill sets, a link to community colleges where you can have, be taught this program in depth if that's really the direction you want to go, and also some forecasting of where in the future this topic may take us. So for the instructors, it gets a little more academic. We also include essential competencies for technicians in this skill area and the cross-disciplinary skills that cut across disciplines, but are specifically applicable in this particular skill set. On the back of the card, there's an activity. There are resources that are free that may help implement the activity. There are existing resources, there are warm-up questions, the activity itself. So it's a little bite-sized lesson that you can use to introduce these topics and begin integrating them. So that's a lot. That's our a look back at our last webinar. Why don't we take a poll, Mike?
Thank you, Anne-Claire. Today, obviously, we're talking about instructional resources, learning resources. Now, let's take a look at this poll. It asks you, it says, when I look for learning resources for students, what do I look for? Number one, something that helps them learn in the context of industry. Number two, you can have multiple selections here. I look for something that reinforces what we've discussed in class. Number three, I look for short instructional YouTube videos, right? As instructors, we know if we're not sure what to do, show them a video. No, I'm joking about that. Number four, I look for something that encourages them to research and find information on their own. And if you have some other ideas of what you look for, put them in the chat window and we'll take a look at those. So just as a concept, we're going to tell you, of course, we're going to expand on what Anne-Claire said. But let's take a look. I'll give you just another moment to respond. Thank you all. Lots of people putting in their things. This is not a hard one, folks. Just make a good guess there. Okay, here we go. Let's do a countdown. Make your last selections. Looks like everyone has applied. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you. So Anne-Claire and Marilyn, look at that top one there. I look for something that helps them learn in the context of industry. But you can see there's a lot of interest in the other selections as well. Marilyn, with this information, why don't you give us some more details now about the instructional cards, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this poll.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. And Claire, you can move forward. You can move forward from there also. So we're going to talk a little bit about actually using some of the information that we've whizzed through just now and was also recorded in the previous webinar, and take a little deeper dive, first of all, into these 3 skill areas. You can see data knowledge and analytics, advanced digital literacy, and business knowledge and processes. Go ahead, Claire. And there's a number of skill sets under each of these. They're arranged in alphabetical order in each column under each skill area, with no particular priority or emphasis on any of them. They're just arranged neatly in alphabetical order. We know that most programs would need many of these skills. We're not saying that all of these skill sets are needed by all technicians, but some collection of these may be needed by cross-disciplinary groups in every set of program or in every college just across the country. So we'll be talking about some of them specifically to give some examples going forward. So let's move on. So Anne-Claire did a good job of talking about the student card. So we'll just go ahead and skip this. This is one we're going to talk about, the instructor card next. And the instructor resource card for basic programming, particularly Python as the example, is what the first card we're going to delve into. We are going to look at the technical competencies and on the front side, and the cross-disciplinary skills also on the front. And then talk a little bit about the scenarios and situations that we would expect to find these kinds of skill sets being used by different technicians. So let's go to the next slide. I'm leaving the activity side of the instructor card up to the audience participants to explore. Next. And one more, next. So the first thing we want to talk about on this particular card, basic programming, Python, it's in the digital fluency literacy skill area. And just to help everybody's eyeballs a little bit, we've enlarged the two sections on the very far left for the actual skills and competencies, and then the cross-disciplinary skills sets as well. So I'll just let you glance at those technical skills at the top. Go back there. Can you go back? And that's typically what you'll see in the competency skills. Those may be very particular technical kinds of skills. And the cross-disciplinary skills may also be technical. I've just highlighted where these skills like artificial intelligence and machine learning, programming, communications, continuous process improvement, data viz, and statistics are some of those that are observed in the particular scenarios that are presented on this card as just those industry views of what the competencies would look like for the technicians. And here you can see them in this little icon on the side, just where they exist for reference and visual clues as to what category or what skill area they're in. Okay, next. So let's just take a quick summary of what the two scenarios are in this particular Python programming. Instructional card is about. So here we've got the supply chain and logistics scenario. There's a broader situation described above, but what that technician was doing is using Python to develop highly targeted application to address a unique customer in a company that's outside of the company and their needs. In a biotech kind of situation, a Python task might be the technician developing an application, to set the printer parameters and incorporate the particular library functions that might be used in the analytical tools. So both using Python, very different applications, and kind of important for students to see the breadth of the skill sets that they're learning. All right, next. So we'll run through a couple more of these cards, looking at the hard skills, the technical skills, we might call them, and things that fall in this cross-disciplinary skill set. So very specific to data literacy and fluency. This is in the data knowledge and analysis skill area. That's the one on the far left of your of the outline of the three skill areas. And also in our color code there, all will be green. So there's some technical skills very specific to data literacy and fluency. And down at the bottom, again, some cross-disciplinary skills that are going to be related to the particular scenarios that we're going to talk about next. So analytics tools, communication, data viz, and statistics. So next. So the two situations on this card for illustration are in agriculture and ag tech and a bioinformation tech. The bioinformation scenario, just in summary, is asked to extract background research data related to new cancer protocols that NIH is verifying. So they're going to have to show some of that and understand the data that they're researching, and most likely present it on to their bosses or supervisors. In the ag situation, one scenario might be that the tech provides recommendations for a soil monitoring system that will collect and send sensor data from several farms to the cloud for crop growth and grain availability for processing information. So same idea, they have to understand what the data is and be able to work with it. Next, please. All right, so we have another green card here. So this is specifically spreadsheets, came up many times when we were collecting our data for our skill areas in many different, from many different technical areas. Being fluent with spreadsheets, you might consider this as programming because we do say that we program spreadsheets. There may be some overlap there. Again, specific competencies for working with spreadsheets on the top and down at the bottom. Some of those data, some of the cross-disciplinary skill sets. You'll see some boxed up in at least two of the skill areas, most of them being over there in the very first one, data knowledge and analysis. I won't read through all of those this time. Okay, so let's look at those two scenarios. Again, I'm leaving the top part that might describe a bigger situation for you to look at separately or at another time, and just going to focus on the scenarios. So for advanced manufacturing technicians, the company might want to install a smart HMI, a human machine interface, that is, to report data compatible with an Excel spreadsheet. And the technician has to complete the programming interface to get that translation from whatever output from the HMI into an Excel format, readable format. And an engineering technician, this might be just a general engineering tech, management wants an effective, easy to share reporting mechanism that can accommodate email delivery of the data presented as charts and graphs. And that particular technician would be working on that, making sure that those Excel graphs and tables will easily go into other file formats. Okay, next. Okay, moving on to our last column. We have something under business knowledge and processes, and this would be for lean. We all know lean is really important. Here we have, again, some competencies. You might see some specific technical skills related to lean very specifically. And down at the bottom, the cross-disciplinary tools, you'll see some common guys coming up in 3 or 4 of these cards already showing up. And just again, for visual identification, you can see them on where they are on the card and how they cross in the 3 different areas. Right, next. And for those scenarios, we have supply chain and IT situations. For supply chain, the tech might be working on software applications for RFID warehouse inventory tracking system. And the technician in the IT situation might have to recommend and ultimately install a new server that is cost effective and compatible with the other construction companies within their local area network. So again, same basic skill set, but different applications in different disciplines. So lastly, we've gone back to the green set, the data knowledge and analysis skill area. And this one happens to have just one. Oh, sorry, I skipped the competencies and the cross-disciplinary skills. Probably don't need to focus on this anymore. I'll just pause a second and you can take a look at those. See them distributed across the 3 skill areas. Next. This card has only one scenario. As you can see on the left, it's a little bit longer, with more details in it. So in this IT network performance scenario, the tech would be creating a Excel-based visualization of the building's LAN and trying to increase Ethernet connections to support stationary devices, external devices, the printers, the scanners, routers, etc. All right, so we looked at lots of those. And now we're going to turn and look at them from a different perspective. We'll take one more perspective before I close out. And again, we're focused on just these particular 5 cards as a real small snapshot of what technicians do every day. And we're only analyzing that data that we just went through, which is the different skills, cross-disciplinary skills that they use. So we're going to start with the data analysis, knowledge and analysis, cross-disciplinary skills that we just, what we saw as we went through these 5 cards. And if you looked back and counted them up, every single one of them said that every one of the scenarios involved some data visualization by those different techs. So around this loop are the 7 different kinds of technicians that we just breeze through their snapshot in their life. And all of them would have to deal with data viz. Next. We're going to do the same thing again. This won't be too, you went one too far. You go back one. Statistics is the next skill, and it just repeats what we saw. It was common to all of those particular 5 scenarios that we looked at on those 5 cards. 7 scenarios. There's more than 5 scenarios, but all the scenarios on the 5 cards we just looked at. All right, next. So still in the data column is analytical tools, and here we start seeing some differences in this particular skill, cross-disciplinary skill set, biotechnology. For the specific example scenario that was given, didn't really need this, wouldn't have to apply this particular skill. So that's how we're reading this. We're just looking to illustrate some of the cross-disciplinary nature of these skills. Next. Computational thinking is a stark difference from that. For the one scenario that did point out, say that it used that skill, we only saw that it was a manufacturing technician. So that's not to say, again, that these other techs don't use this skill in some other situations in their workplace. It's just that for these examples, this is what it looked like. Next. And I'll just flash through these. And Claire, data fluency, data management. We return to almost everybody again for those scenarios. And spreadsheets, just one. Next. Basic programming. Again, I think this could be aligned and matched with the spreadsheets, but everybody but manufacturing. Next. AI was very specifically called out in the biotechnology scenario, but in none of the others. Communications in all. Next. Continuous process improvement only happened to be called out in one, although we know that's a pretty, 2 network technicians. So now let's, I'm going to pivot all of that information into just a table, so we can look at it from the technicians and see again from that snapshot. There's just an awful lot of overlap and need for all kinds of technicians to use these skills. So again, the technicians are across the top. The 7 different techs we ran into in the scenarios, and then we put ran out of room at the bottom, so they're not quite all here. The different cross-disciplinary skills that they experienced. So what can we say about all that data? One thing is it's important that a lot of different faculty in different disciplines address these skills. But maybe there's some opportunities both for faculty and for faculty to collaborate with their colleagues in other departments, and the students to get a wider view of some of the skills that they're learning and where they might be applied in different discipline areas. So here's just a couple ideas for everyone in the classroom. You can share the student cards, of course, with the students and have some discussions, have them do them in small groups. Ask them to make up some situations and scenarios. It'll be interesting to see if they come up with some ideas of how those skills are used, those cross-disciplinary skills are used in different situations, maybe even in their daily life. Student development, they can share alternative situations, classroom activities that can be done, those activities that are on that one card. Next. And then next, outside of the classroom, I mentioned already working with your colleagues to develop new scenarios, co-teach those, and bring the classes together, perhaps for for sharing what the skills that they're learning in their program overlap with skills in another. And I think that's it. So it's just some ideas.
Marilyn, thank you for that presentation. Perfectly on time. I'm fascinated by these cards, so I can get them, right? I think there's going to be a link in the chat window where I can just print them myself, right? And distribute them to my students and my friends and take them home to my family.
Yes, you can. You probably already have a set, Mike.
I think is interesting, Marilyn, is inevitably, as in our classrooms, right, we're trying to convince students that they do have to increase their skills and competencies in data visualization, right? And they're always asking, well, why do we have to do that? But if I were to look at these cards, those scenarios, it helps a faculty member or an instructor say, look, here's how this might be used. I think that really does drive it home for the students, doesn't it?
Oh, I think so. They always want something in context. And the faculty like to teach in context of what it would be like. And hopefully the cards can give them some ideas to share with their students from different disciplines. This isn't just something you have to learn if you decide you want to do something else in the future besides be a biotechnician or be a manufacturing tech, that you can take a lot of the skills that you know with you.
The question that came up had to do with, how do I modify my student learning outcomes if I'm bringing this in? Many faculty, they have to have their SLOs, their student learning outcomes. But I think I know the answer, and I just wonder what you think. Those lists of skills and competencies on the cards, faculty could put those into the language of student learning outcomes pretty easily, couldn't they?
Oh, I think so. So some of them are kind of broad, and so we might have to work on them. The skill sets will have some very specific, skills. They should be able to, turn the computer on, and some of those, that level of skills are embedded in the skill sets. But certainly having competency with spreadsheets to show data visualization would certainly be a student learning outcome.
Marilyn, your presentation has given me confidence as an instructor to actually bring this into the classroom. So thank you very much for doing that. And Claire, let's turn the presentation back over to you.
Certainly. I just wanted to close out with some ideas for professional development. Of course, you can download the instructional cards and play with those. Attached to them is a framework for a cross-disciplinary STEM core, which sets up the rationale for even having the instructional cards and for additional actions that you and your colleagues can take on your campus. We also have podcasts that are wonderful, and I will show you a few in a minute. And then all 3 webinars will be recorded. So this one, as Mike said, will be available Tuesday. The first one is already available, and we hope that next month you will join us again for another webinar. Here's an example of the podcast. In addition to having recorded interviews with some people who really know what they're talking about and have really interesting technologies to share with us, there are also a list of ideas of what you can use that podcast for. How is it professional development for you? How can you take part of it and apply it in the classroom? And I'll brag on Mike. He's the one who's been doing our podcast for us and who's also done the analysis, the instructional analysis for us. Our webinar series coming up, Future of Work, Integrating Emerging Technologies, and Christine Christensen from Gateway Technical College will be with us next month. And here's the date, May 20th, same time, only 30 minutes. And we hope to see you then. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Anne Claire. And everyone, as you exit the webinar today, opening in a new browser window will be a very brief survey that helps us gauge the impact of these webinars and helps us improve them. So thank you very much for filling out the survey as you exit today. We're perfectly on time, and that ends our webinar today. Thanks everyone for joining.